God, and dear man, I'll take you far away under the sycamore trees, in the dark trees that blow, baby, in the dark trees that blow.
And welcome to Twin Peaks Unwrapped. I'm your host, Ben Durant, and beside me is...
Bryon Kazaska.
Hi, Bryon.
Hey, Ben, how are you?
Doing great. So we've got John Bernardy from 25 Years Later site on the show today to talk about his new article, Understanding Season 3, How the Fireman Brings Back Some Memories.
Let's just get into it.
All right, we're on the phone with John Bernardy. He's the associate editor of 25 Years Later site. Hi, John.
Hey there.
So you recently had an article that you can't put out, Understanding Season 3, How the Fireman Brings Back Some Memories. And that's why we have you on the show to talk about this article.
It's a doozy.
Yeah.
It's a mammoth. It's a huge article. I mean, I'm impressed with the detail and what you put together. It's quite an article.
Well, I'm glad you made it through. No, it's a bit of a monster, and like it took me about 2 months just to be able to get it to the point where it was readable. And I mean, I ran it past a bunch of 25 Years Later, and it's like, is this actually all necessary? Like, is there is there anything that shouldn't be in here? And nobody could unmarry it from itself. So. Here we are. And I'm reading it, I was kind of like, it started taking me in other places too. So it's like, it's one of those things that you bring so much information. It's like, oh, well, what about this and what about that? So, I mean, you could keep going. Yeah. And I think that's what I love about Twin Peaks is that there's these theories and these things and it can just go all over the place. And John, you've done a great job in the past, either with your earthquake theory and let's get into this. Let's talk about, can you go section by section and we can talk about the article? Essentially, I started out with memory because, I mean, everybody was forgetting things. Oh my gosh, Gordon Cole needed a Monica Bellucci dream to remember a scene from Fire Walk with Me that we're all pretty familiar with.
And last night, I had another Monica Bellucci dream. I was in Paris on a case. Monica called and asked me to meet her at a certain cafe. She said she needed to talk to me. When we met at the cafe, Cooper was there, but I couldn't see his face. Monica was very pleasant. She had brought friends. We all had a coffee. And then she said the ancient phrase.
We're like the dreamer who dreams and then lives inside the dream.
We are like the dreamer who dreams and then lives inside the dream. I told her I understood. And then she said,
But who is the dreamer?
But who is the dreamer? A very powerful, uneasy feeling came over me. Monica looked past me and indicated to me to look back at something that was happening there. I turned and looked. I saw myself. I saw myself from long ago in the old Philadelphia offices, listening to Cooper telling me he was worried about a dream he had.
Gordon, it's 10:10 a.m. on February 16th. I was worried about today because of the dream I told you about.
And that was the day Philip Jeffries appeared.
Gordon,
and didn't appear. Philip, is that you?
Philip?
Cooper, meet the long-lost Philip Jeffries. You may have heard of him from the Academy. And while Jeffries was apparently there, he raised his arm and pointed at Cooper and asked me,
Who do you think that is there?
"Damn, I hadn't remembered that. Now this is really something interesting to think about."
Yes. I'm beginning to remember that too.
So, like, why would he forget that, and why would Albert forget it? So basically, I started this whole mess because I wanted to figure out why people were forgetting things and what the whole deal with memory was. So I kind of figured out there were three different kinds of memories. There's the memories and structures, like haunted houses, the typical thing, like where the walls remember, like everything from a grandma walking up the stairs, like, every night around 11:30 to, it remembers like a murder that happened,
Yeah.
and the walls just kind of replay it. And horror movies, they do that all the time. And, you hear about like ghost hunter shows, about how spirits just kind of do this loopy thing all the time. So, that's one kind of way that, like, physicality remembers things. And then, people, we remember it in our bodies, like we, the way I put it in the article was that, like you just had a job interview. What do you do? From the first minute after it's over, like you start kind of replaying moments in your head, like, oh man, what would I have done here? What should I have done here? What kind of outcome would that get? And, like you're just replaying it in a loop. So, I mean, you're not really, the mind isn't really that much different from a haunted house in that regard. And, then there's the next section that I did was memories and dreams, and this is where it definitely gets Lynchian in particular, because it seems like in Twin Peaks that the memories that you make in a dream stay in the dream somehow, and essentially in the initial in season 1, Cooper's getting whispered to by Laura. And, he calls up Harry right afterwards saying, I know who killed Laura Palmer because of, what he got whispered to in his ear. And of course, the next morning we all know that he forgot and he can't remember. So again, memory, like from that moment forward, memory has just been this huge, kind of mechanic in this town, that is worth figuring out. And it does seem to have kind of rules, but, yeah, it's just tricky, and breaking it down into those three pieces, the physical, the body, and kind of this dream soul world. That's kind of how I started to delineate, and then from there, this whole article kind of took its shape.
That's awesome. Yeah. I was going to say, like, it's going in that memories and structures, something I've been thinking about for a while. I think I was talking to John Thorne, and I was hoping to write an article, but I'm just going to bring it up now. This whole idea.
Yeah.
There's a whole thing with Sarah Palmer where she's calling for Laura. And, of course, the original one is in the pilot where she's going up the stairs looking for Laura, time to go time to go to school. And then, again, in the episode 2, Cooper has a dream and the whole Fire Walk With Me poem. But in that, there's also Sarah calling for Laura, and this happens again in the second episode of season 2. He has another dream about the owls are not what they seem, and there's Sarah calling. Yeah, and then Bryon and we saw Fire Walk With Me on the big screen. I can't remember when that was. It was summertime or something? Summertime. And we could hear the sound of Sarah calling for Laura again right after Annie is in the bed with Laura, she gets up and there's that sound. And then we have, of course, Carrie at the house, part 18, and there's Sarah calling. And all of these are directed by David Lynch, so it's not like it's even a different person. And there is that haunting feeling, and it's dreamlike, and it is memories, but it's not memories, I guess, because I don't know if Laura was there to witness that. But there's something happening, and I question whether is it Sarah trying to speak to Laura, Carrie, or is it Cooper that is the dreamer that is experiencing this? But I don't know. You talking about being haunted in this haunted house made me think Sarah Palmer, and I don't have it all worked out, and that's why I want John Thorne to do more about it. But there's some kind of haunted feeling, and it seems like dreams. It seems like there could be a memory.
Yeah,
But there isn't.
yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I wanted to share that, but I love the way you structured and built this, and I also thought about how you kind of talk about the Palmer house being a haunted house, and Bryon and I, when we were first doing the show, Bryon would say that the Palmer house is haunted.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh my God, it's so long ago.
Yeah, I heard about that every once in a while, and like Ali Sharaba on our site, she has a good one called oh my gosh, What is Going On in This House? And it's all about like the liminal status of the Palmer house and everything. And like, once I figured out, it's like, oh man, this is like a ghost story. And again, a haunted house. And I mean the way that houses absorb memories. I mean, I think the house remembers Sarah calling for Laura that morning.
I like that.
And I think it could just be as simple as it's a haunted house. It absorbed that memory. It was a strong impact of a memory.
Yeah.
We all remember it. It's been in film over and over again. The film reinforces the memory into the house. I mean, like David Lynch himself reinforces it into the house every time he's the director. I mean, like I think it could just be as simple as that. Like it doesn't have to be Sarah reaching out. I mean, it can be because it's Twin Peaks and there's like 14,000 different directions you could take any one particular detail.
Yeah.
But I mean, it doesn't even have to go into the supernatural that much. You just know like what our world thinks of as a haunted house mechanic. It could just be as simple as that. And I do end up looping back to there by the end of this article with Carrie. I really think that the house just remembers Sarah calling to Laura that morning.
That's cool. And in Gothic literature, it's common for the house to be represented as character's psychological state. So like if it's in decay and if it's ruined, it's kind of like that person is kind of ruined.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's
And her house was Sarah's house was like falling apart. She didn't really do much but smoke and drink. Yeah.
Yeah. And then your next section was the whole memories and bodies, and I think you got into that. I actually don't have anything else about that right now. But the memories and dream is a huge thing, and I guess I do feel like that's so in Twin Peaks about, the dreams are almost speaking these memories to people. You started to say, John, you started to go into this about how, Cooper gets whispered to in his dream. And you mentioned in this article that it takes all the way till, I think, episode 16 where Leland gets his favorite gum, and he triggers.
Yeah, he needs a memory trigger.
Yeah, I love that. I love the way you said that.
It's just like : close parentheses, capital A, capital L, capital L. It's a memory trigger.
Right. Mm-hmm. That's really cool. And so I'm wondering is like in season 3, Laura again whispers to Cooper, and I questioned whether Cooper even remembers what she said to him. And if he didn't remember, what trigger is it going to take for Cooper to remember what Laura said? And I also want to point out that you're not calling her Laura. In your article, you believe the woman in the lodge is actually Carrie.
You're a Carrie person like me.
Yeah. Well, you figure. I mean, I think you and you guys and John Thorne actually did cover this like explicitly, but like they went through like all these painstaking steps to make Laura look like Laura from Fire Walk with Me in part 17 in the forest. And why in the world wouldn't they do that for Lodge Laura in season 3?
Exactly. It's her hair. Her hair is the same. She has Carrie's hair. At the end, Carrie Page's hair. She looks exactly like Carrie Page, and that was my point too. Yeah, the hair, because when we saw her in the Red Room last, she looked like Laura Palmer. She had long blonde hair. Yeah.
And that pretty much goes into the next section of my article too, with Tulpa. The whole Tulpa thing. Like I think Carrie Page is a Tulpa. I mean, she takes her face off and everything like that. She's nothing but energy, basically. And one thing that I've essentially come up with here, and I'm not saying I'm right, obviously, but I have to come up with some sort of mechanic to, be able to explore what I'm trying to with memory. And this is one thing that I came up with was that tulpas are basically personified trauma. So memories and dreams, essentially Red Room, all that stuff ends up operating under like sort of a dreamish logic. Theosophy has kind of an angle on that where like basically like leave for a higher astral plane when you're dreaming. And we know that Frost highly, he brought in a whole bunch of theosophy into the mythology of season 2. And then Lynch had Ronnie Rocket, which is basically, I mean, it's like there's one dimension and then there's another dimension that we live in. And like, these people basically want to get from one dimension to another. And honestly, it's been a long time since I've read the Ronnie Rocket script at this point. So I'm I'm not going to hit all the marks on that one anymore. But
I just want to say about Ronnie Rocket, real quick about Ronnie Rocket. Just to say that, like, we love our Sycamore Trees song. We play it at the beginning of every one of our shows. Those lyrics originally came from the first draft of Ronnie Rocket.
Oh, really?
So a girl actually says these words about the sycamore trees, and I'll see you and you'll see me and all this. But it's funny that, like, I didn't realize that till maybe in the last year or so. I was looking over Ronnie Rocket and I saw those words. It's like, wow, Lynch pulled these words and he brought it into episode 29 of Twin Peaks. Where he does that all the time too, though. He takes these ideas he's had and he kind of brings it somewhere else. But but it is a really trippy script and something it unfortunately never got produced.
But it's kind of it's a trippy script in that it's like prototype of season 3, kind of like how Blue Velvet was the prototype of season 1.
Yeah, it's true.
Like it's just it has a lot of like backbone for all the weird electricity stuff that Lynch has been doing his whole career, but especially in season 3, like all the electricity going through the lines and everything. I mean, basically, Ronnie Rocket is like this guy who can kind of control electricity. And it seems like electricity is kind of subbed in, kind of like how Hawk has it. It's like this life energy, or like the energy of the all or something.
Yeah.
I mean, okay. So electricity is like that, and basically, like the people that are trying to kill Ronnie Rocket don't want to kill him in the city. Or, I mean, they don't want to kill him away from the city because then he'll become a memory. Like, they specifically say that line. And that seems to me to be really important to, like, how Lynch thinks of memories.
Yeah, and, I love that. And I think the only way they have to kill him in the dream world or something, or another world, right? They can't do it. I love that idea of, like, if you kill them in the real world, they become a memory, and it's almost like they become more powerful, almost like a godlike or something that, like, they're...
They live on forever.
I love that idea.
Yeah, but I think that's kind of also applying to this version of Twin Peaks. Like, I think, like, basically, if you're killed and you are brought into the room, through an owl ring or whatever, because I think it basically happened to Diane and Laura. That like when they were killed, they left behind a tulpa in the lodge, and Diane, the one that's in Philly, that Albert picks up, that ends up being revealed as the tulpa. I think that's the same thing that happened to Carrie. It's like they both got basically born in the lodge. They're a memory that because it's not a physical space, it doesn't get absorbed into the walls. The memory kind of takes on a life of its own and grows into this shape that ends up basically like Trema grows legs and starts walking around and like you gotta just, I mean, like it's so hard to explain because it's so abstract, like this whole thing. It's like I spent 2 months writing this thing, and I still can't even talk about it.
No, you're making a lot of sense. I mean, it's part of it's hard for me to think of Laura in the lodge as being a tulpa. Like, I want to always believe she's real, but it is. I definitely see what you're saying. She takes off her face, and it's just light, and she says, like she said before, I feel like I know her. My arms bend back, and I am her, but I'm not her. And it's like, I can kind of see that she could be a tulpa. And wow.
Yeah, and it's like the abstracted trauma that Laura had to leave behind on the impact of her death.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's not exactly, like a nuclear bomb going off that rips holes between realities or anything like that. But I mean, the impact of that particular kind of death involving the owl ring symbol, involving, everything supernatural, involving Bob, all that stuff. Like, I totally believe that would be able to manifest trauma as a thing all its own.
Yeah. Do you think Ray would have a tulpa since he wore the owl ring and we find him in the Red Room?
I don't see why not.
Yeah.
I mean, he showed up in the Red Room.
Yep.
Which is interesting. Maybe he was a tulpa the whole time.
Yeah. No,
Well,
but
I don't think that, but I think, maybe that because his body stayed on Earth, but, he still showed up on the floor of the waiting room. So, I mean, I don't see any reason why that wasn't just the creation of a tulpa.
the next section you had is the weakened barrier between two worlds. Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah. Okay. So so basically, like, we have the way memory works, but why is it so wonky in Twin Peaks? Well, it's because all the barriers are basically broken down between the worlds. And I know this is basically what I came up with my my earthquake timequake mechanic is basically like there's the higher dimension of the lodge spaces and our physical dimension, and they basically like interact with each other and scrape across each other, and like every time there is an interaction, like whether it's through the owl cave ring or just like meeting a lodge denizen or whatever, there's like a friction that's caused by it. And so like basically our world is a tectonic plate and their world is a tectonic plate. And every once in a while the plates shift. And since the final dossier, I kind of got this idea that like maybe the impacts were so strong around portals that basically like part of the lodge pushes into our space and part of our space pushes into the lodge space. So like it ends up becoming like this kind of nested reality or a layered reality. And it's kind of like we're the screen and the lodge universe or whatever, the lodge dimension is projected on top of us like a veil.
Totally.
It's something kind of like that. And, it's not that, we're in multiple dimensions. It's not anything like that. It's just the fact that we're being influenced by this other reality that's just kind of like flowing through us, around us, and we're flowing around and, within and on top of too. And, like every weird little dream logic kind of thing that happens in the lodge space, we're actually kind of privy to. Being in this physical world. And I mean, it's messing with everybody. And I think that's why everybody's forgetful. It's not just the lodge people or the people that are trying to remember their dreams anymore. Now it's, just everybody doing it all the time. And, you can kind of see like trauma, like coming to life too, the screaming, lady who has the zombie kid next to her that Bobby Briggs looks in, it's like, I think that's kind of like a manifestation lodge style of like that one woman's own pain, kind of brought to life in the physical world.
Yeah.
I mean, just simple things like that. I mean, why else would it be in there other than, it's a barometer of this is kind of what's happening to the town at large.
Right. I like how you mentioned the hum of the Great Northern. And I don't know if we've ever said on the show, but of course that same hum is in episode 27 where Ben Horn looks back and stuff, but it's that hum is the portal. Or it's the other world kind of interfering a little bit with our world. And,
bleeding through.
Yeah. And I love you
it's a lowered barrier.
Yeah.
Yeah. To go into the parallel things, someone on Reddit had posted this, and I've noticed, I don't know who it was, so I give them full credit on finding this, and it's got me thinking, and maybe you thought about this, John. Someone found, in Fire Walk with Me, Laura Palmer walks over to the mantle above the fireplace. Or no, and I think she's getting drugs or money or something where someone keep a stash of something, and the way she does it, she holds her hands, and it's almost, not exactly, but almost the same way she presents her hands. I think it was in 9 when she says meanwhile, which is interesting. And then when she does the point, it's all done backwards, obviously, in the Red Room. She does the point, and she points down. In Firewalk with Me, it's almost the same point when her and her friend, they're at the table, and the two guys, and she's topless, and she does the point.
Oh.
And someone on Reddit pointed that out. They're like, those are almost exactly the same. And it's interesting because, Lynch wouldn't just tell Cheryl Lee to point. There's a way you got to do it. He has that in his mind.
Yeah.
So I feel like what you said makes total sense, because I would love to watch the Red Room stuff in particularly, and then see if you see Laura do similar actions in the real world that she's done. And those two are good examples. Those two are very good examples. I mean, they could be a stretch, I guess, but when you watch them side by side, you're like, wow, that's it can't be a coincidence.
Yeah, that's something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
John, what I like is that you also bring up, I thought, was about these portals, but maybe you can go more about Audrey and having a baby. I don't want to give it away because I want you to talk about it.
Audrey having a
baby. Oh, man. I wish I could find that spot.
Well, I think it's Audrey's own body became a lodge portal.
Yeah, I'll just read that section.
All right.
At the crux of the nexus point is Audrey Horne. She is literally caught between worlds more than anyone else because Doppelcooper did not bring her to the lodge to put her in a lodge-adjacent space. She was already there, in a coma when Doppelcooper and Bob raped her in the hospital. She never let the trauma turn her into a tulpa because she remained herself, as Audrey always does, nor was she meant to be a tulpa before the last-minute course correct of Audrey's character during the season 3's filming. Audrey's tulpa does not haunt a physical space. Audrey's life bodily haunts lodge-adjacent space. How do we know she's caught between worlds? The exact dialogue between her and Charlie as she loops about needing to go to the roadhouse. Then there's her break from the roadhouse when she gets there, when she dances to the song titled after her. Not only does she jump to another location as she mentally has a breakthrough, the music plays backwards from there. Her POV went strictly into the physical world, and the roadhouse began sounding like it's from the lodge playing backwards. Why is Audrey so attuned to this where it's vague with everyone else? Because she's also a portal. When she gave birth to Richard Horne, her own body became a lodge portal.
Love it.
Yeah,
I think that's really crazy, but I love it.
You made that role so much better. I mean, it kind of goes with a lot of what we thought about other things with her character, meaning more than on the surface.
But to have the son, Mr. C's son in Audrey, I mean, that's where you have somebody that's already supernatural or from another world, or I love it. I like the idea.
That's a great theory. That's awesome.
Yeah, I really think there has to be something to it. I realized that, a lot of that was kind of built after the fact, but I mean, it's still part of a whole. I mean, Frost in one of his AMAs on Reddit, he would talk about how, for how many months? Is it over 3 months? Lynch and Frost would just literally just talk about the overall logic of the place. And, they got that kind of figured out so that regardless of, what Lynch does with season 3 and whatever Frost will do with his books, they're all operating under the same kind of rules.
Yeah,
totally.
So I think the way that Audrey got kind of repurposed in season 3 kind of implies a lot of things about the undercurrents.
Totally. I agree.
Yeah.
So the next section is Black Lodge from boom to bust. Do you want to get into that?
That's kind of the same general.
Well, what I can take from what I could take from that is one of the things is you seem to be talking about. Well, I made a note say that is Judy just the evil that men and women do? Is it because you seem to be indicating to me that whether is Judy real or is this some kind of red herring?
Judy's a place.
Yeah, because for one thing, I just can't. Me personally, I can't get a beat on this whole Judy thing. I just think. I mean, a lot of people are saying it's kind of a retcon, and I kind of think it is, but purposefully. Purposefully a retcon. I'll probably get to that later. Well, yeah, I'll have to. But yeah, I don't really know what Judy is other than like, yeah, I'm just kind of applying the old Bob metaphor onto Judy, you know, like is Judy, you know, just like the force of darkness, like it is like Judy a personified lodge, basically.
Yeah.
Like, you know, is Judy does Judy basically sub out for the word Black Lodge? The way everybody you know, like all the kids who seem to be kind of in touch with other spaces, you know, it's like, you know, you take drugs, you change you basically change the frequency of your brain, right?
Mm-hmm.
And what I'm thinking is that basically the Black Lodge is the invading party. That it's not just all lodge space. It's like the Black Lodge is the particular part of the space that's creeping out through all the portals. You can kind of see it with people like Steven and the Roadhouse kids. You know, it's like everybody's got this out of control appetite and they're looking for satisfaction, but you know, the golden circle just doesn't work because, you know, the appetite just overwhelms everything. And like everything you've ever heard about the Black Lodge, it kind of feels like people are kind of doing that. And that's why I'm kind of giving the Black Lodge credit for being the particular, you know, lodge space that's, you know, coexisting with our space right now.
Yeah.
And I wish I remember the exact way you phrased it, but you were kind of thinking like Judy was like almost not a real shape. Like she was not, I forgot the way you phrased it, but it was like this idea that it was like, you know, we see this thing vomiting out the eggs and stuff, but it's not, is it really a real form? Is it, or is it just kind of like...
Oh, yeah. Well, yeah, because they call it an experiment.
Yes, that's
and
right.
I almost think that, yeah, that's where you're going. I gotcha. Yeah, no, like, why wouldn't it be an experiment if the lodge decides to personify itself? At the point of the bomb impact, you know, there's this giant hole in between the realities, and how is this, like, force of just, you know, appetite going to, you know, push its way through? Well, if we're in a physical world, why not push through bodily and, you know, kind of like come up with this form of this, like, I mean, I don't know if it's a demon or like whatever. I mean, but I kind of think of it like the way people used to argue about Bob, you know, like, was he just an expression of, you know, the evil or not? So, you know, like this experiment could be the personified lodge. And, you know, it's basically seeding our world and getting a foothold in because, you know, hey, you know, real estate, why not?
Yeah.
You know, you got to, if you're hungry for everything, you know, why not be hungry for whatever you're looking at through the barrier between the worlds?
Well, to bring up Judy real quick, it's interesting because, you know, Jeffries says he was at Judy's and he watched these two people sit there and he watched them for, you know, and so
no, you're saying, you know, is this the deleted scenes or the missing scenes?
No, this is from Firewalk with Me.
Okay, he says, I've been to Judy's.
Yeah, I've been to Judy's. And then we see Cooper go to Judy's, or Richard, go to physically a place called Judy's. So
and are we in a dream world? We don't even know if
exactly.
we're in the real world or not, right?
And now when I hear Jeffries say that line, I'm brought to that place. And it's like what you're saying. It's like it's giving it a form of Judy's, and what does that represent in that different world that they were in?
Yeah, and the only other person we know is Carrie worked at Judy's.
Exactly,
so,
which is interesting. So, did Cooper become the next Jeffries? Is he taking on this mantle of whatever? But yeah, now it's connected that for me. I just cannot not think of Judy's restaurant when he says that. So yeah, I mean, it is interesting. The whole Judy thing. I like to just.
It's funny that it's funny how Lynch and Frost gave us more information about Judy's, but at the same time, we're still have no idea
what it is.
Judy's is.
Yeah, I like not knowing, honestly.
Yeah. So our next section is "No One Wants to Die, Not Even a Lodge."
Yeah, well, this is kind of where I start to crib an idea that Jeff Jensen put out on the EW's The Twin Peaks podcast, where basically Bob is this character who's basically the guy who goes out in the world, gets the Garmonbozia, sends it back home to the lodge so that they can eat. You know, I mean, it's basically, you know, he has one particular job to do on this world, according to the Black Lodge people. And they basically want to keep their Bob. Like, this is why they've decided to take Laura from the time stream. Because if Laura isn't killed by Bob and therefore kind of defeating him at the same time, then basically Bob is still in Leland, still kind of, kept in his role. Whereas if Laura does die, then you're talking about eventually he takes a ride in Dale Cooper's doppelganger and then goes AWOL. And, you can kind of see that in season 3, like, the Lodge isn't really doing that well. So, you got the little man from another place, like, evolving into another form. I mean, it's things are changing there.
Yeah.
And it's not necessarily something that they want, I don't think. And, you got Philip Gerard basically trying to keep Cooper safe, because I think, so there's the thing where the doppelganger and Dale know kind of what each other feels all the time. Like they are able to share like some sort of experiential memory, because like if nothing else, like, the image of Cooper Dougie looking in the mirror in the Jones house, like expecting like,
see Bob,
almost expecting to see Bob, or maybe even his doppelganger or something like that. It seems like he understands what has happened to him and things that the doppelganger knows. So basically, I'm thinking that because of that, they kind of have to trick Doppelcooper into falling into a trap. So like they have to kind of do subterfuge, and this is why I think Judy could be technically a red herring. Like, I could see Philip Jeffries, planting the memory in Dale before he goes to Twin Peaks in the Fire Walk with Me scene, because that's the first time you hear about Judy. That's the only time you hear about Judy until season 3.
Right.
So, I could totally see that being like, the first tease of this whole Judy thing, and like getting Dale like to need to protect or something. This will give Doppelcooper something to think about.
Yeah, so when I think, it's only in one sense you just explained it that I'm maybe understanding it more, because in your article you're talking about how the denizens were kind of maybe inventing an unofficial version for Dale Cooper to go on a quest to find Judy. And now I'm kind of seeing what you seem to be implying is that maybe Jeffries maybe was part of that tricking of having him come to the FBI and say, hey, there's a Judy, and we got to get more information about Judy, which kind of sets it off. And I didn't get that until you just told me this. Like, oh, that makes more sense now. It was almost like Jeffries is implanting false memories or false ideas to kind of I'll let you go off with that.
He's getting the unofficial version rolling right then.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's really cool.
Yeah. That's kind of what I think anyway, because like why else would Jeffries even know about an unofficial version, if he didn't have something to do with it. So I kind of think that like the Monica Bellucci dream that made Gordon Cole remember all this, and then he could do the part 17 retcon that everybody's kind of nervous about.
Yeah.
It's like he could do that because he remembered it in a dream, and the dream kind of led him into this weird unofficial lodge layered reality version. It's like the lodge version that's on the veil over the physical world. That's the stuff that Cole remembers at that particular moment because he was supposed to.
Yeah. And in part 17, there's the whole thing with Cole talking to Albert and saying about how I kept this from you for 25 years, but before Major Briggs went missing, there was a whole plan to basically stop Judy and stuff. And I thought that was an interesting thing that there. So it's something we had Jeffries, and then Cole and Cooper have been talking about, like, that's what our plan is. We got to go do this. We got to stop them. And Cooper even goes into, like, if I go missing, you got to find me, and I got to stop, the whole, was it two birds with one stone thing? So it's interesting to see that seems to be the quest that they're going on. It is this mission, but you're saying it's a red herring, that there is that this.
Yeah, I think that whole mission is a red herring, and that's the unofficial version that Jeffries was telling Dale about.
Now, but the funny thing is, then Jeffries actually lets him go to 1989 to maybe we'll get there.
It's getting slippery in here.
It's getting slippery. We'll get to that point. Maybe we should wait on that. But I know at some point we're going to have to talk about Cooper getting Laura and stuff.
Yeah.
I love in your article too about how you kind of show again Cooper being this white knight, and that like, oh, he's the agent who wanted to crack the Limburg case, and how he didn't feel like he actually solved Laura Palmer case, and that maybe he had this feeling of like, oh yeah, I'll go on this mission because maybe then I can really save Laura. Like he can't get it out of his head that he has to save this girl and stuff, and I like that. That's a great point.
And him being in basically the Black Lodge. I'm calling the Red Room the Black Lodge because I mean, as far as I can tell, they're related enough where they may as well be.
Right.
So like everybody in the Black Lodge kind of has that whole appetite thing going for them, and it's like basically worldly concerns. You need to keep going. You need to survive, and it's like a worldly concern for Dale would be, I want to crack that case. It's like his landlords are basically concerned about all these worldly sort of things. So he kind of feels that vibe and he goes with it. And, he's very worldly at this particular point too. And so like, I wouldn't be surprised if, not even necessarily hubris, but hubris is part of the equation. But like, I wouldn't be shocked if going back in time to solve the Laura case, save a girl, and help out his landlords to survive by getting their breadwinner back. Like I wouldn't be shocked, because okay, Bob is evil, but all those other denizens, it's like, what did they ever do to anybody? Like Cooper always sees the good in everybody. I mean, he sees the heart of gold that the Mitchums have. So, he sees the heart of gold that, Philip Gerard has.
Right.
Like I don't see any reason why he would hold Bob against all the other folks that he's been living with.
And I think about that scene early on in the new season 3 there about where Mr. C is in that motel and he's talking to who he thought was Jeffries. He thinks it's Jeffries. And he says, I will be back with Bob again in the Black Lodge. And so it's like, you're right. To me, it seems like the Denneys do want to get Bob back. Like that seems to be maybe their
major
mission.
Goal. Yeah.
So they want to get him back at the end and at the beginning. It's like they need to get Bob out of Doppelcooper, so that he can come back in the lodge. Basically, I think Bob basically ran a scam with Dale in episode 29. Basically, it's like he ran a legally binding soul borrowing, or like whatever kind of transaction he made. It's like, I will take yours instead. That whole soul thing. It's like I think Bob did that legally, but against the wishes of the rest of the tribe.
He seems, the rebel. He was a rebel.
Even if Fire Walk would be the missing pieces, there's definitely a sense that Bob is kind of a rebel, and they're like, oh, we want all of our
Garvin Bosey.
Right, but it seems like that he's kind of a rebel and goes off on his own. Right, you probably did figure out that if he could have Cooper's soul, that he could maybe get out of the lodge and
he didn't want to work for the man anymore.
Can't blame him.
The next section,
he wants to go on vacation.
The next section is the fireman believes in balance. You make some great points about purple and how Jacoby's lenses, when his red and blue kind of make purple, and that's nice. Like a balance. And I like that.
Yeah. So basically, there's this Black Lodge plan to get their Bob back and, basically continue existing in their expansionist kind of way. I mean, they've got this great new toehold on the world, and everything's going pretty great. It's like all they want to do is be able to get more Garmonbosia from this whole thing, and it'll actually work. But the fireman sees all this stuff, and, it's like all the fireman ever seems to want to do is maintain balance. I mean, he has his agents and everything, but it's like he's not your friend. He just wants to achieve a certain balance through the whole thing, and through balance comes an evolution. So like he does want us to be able to make decisions that make us evolve, as we actually see with Major Briggs. As we see with Nadine, as we see with, you get evolutions from the big to the little, even in the lodge. The arm is now a tree.
Yeah.
To achieve balance is to facilitate evolution. So the fireman basically wants to put the barrier back between the lodge space that's intruding on the physical space. Because, I mean, obviously, it's not doing anybody any favors in season 3 to have this kind of crossover. You know, all this bleed through from the portals is just messing with everybody. So the fireman basically wants to fix things and just get it back to kind of where it was. You can see it with Purple all the time. And Jacoby, I know he's a joke, and I've been kind of poking at his whole story for a while now, but I totally believe that his is the message of Twin Peaks. You know, it's like basically recognize what's in front of you, shovel yourself out, and then you can evolve. Yeah. And that's all the fireman's doing. That's basically all you ever hear from. I mean, like even the way Frost is online, you know, like he seems to want people to be able to recognize where we're at and then, you know, overcome. You know, it's like I really think that just in general, like that's the message of the show is like, you know, like recognize your trauma and overcome it. And a lot of that has to do with like coming to a point of balance within yourself so that you can recognize exactly where you're at and then you can find the ladder out.
Nice. Yeah.
I like that.
And yeah.
And I was going to say
signified a lot with Purple.
And I like how you mentioned in your article about how maybe the people are actually getting better in Twin Peaks, because you look at Twin Peaks like, oh, there's crime and there's drugs, and it's so easy to look at the negative things. And you show in the article about how the Mitchum brothers are getting better, Ben Horn's getting better. The whole thing about, I mean, in your quote from your article, Nadine heals herself and finds love prospects with Jacoby while also allowing Ed to heal himself, and Norma's healing herself. And I love that it's so easy to look at the negative and seeing, oh, this place is falling apart, but to see that there actually are people who are rising up and are getting to be better people. So I'm so glad you really made
shoveling
that
the shit.
Yes.
The love is there. The love is coming through.
Yeah, there's this little passage from Margaret Lanterman in Final Dossier. Basically, she says, "When a dark age comes, just as you would at night, hold the light inside you. Others, I can tell you, have already learned to do the same. In time, you will learn to recognize the light in yourself and others, and in this way, you will find each other. Together, you will make the light stronger. This truth I know as sure as the dawn. Darkness will always yield to light when the light is strong."
Yes.
That totally matches up with everything that I was writing in this thing. And I think, I mean, there's no more central message than, you know, overcome trauma.
Yep. It's true.
And yeah.
And I know I was hoping that in season 3 I was wanting to see Laura overcome trauma, but I guess she really did in Fire Walk with Me.
Yeah,
I mean, she really
that was
did
her story.
Her story. But I always felt like, oh, we're going to revisit this. We're going to see her. She's going to confront her dad. She's going to confront her mother. And it wasn't that. And I think, I guess that wasn't the story that was being told.
It was Cooper's
Well,
trauma,
in season 3, it's Cooper's trauma, but it is also Laura's trauma, because I think, you know, at the very end, Carrie does confront what happened to her.
Right.
And does recognize it. And, like, once she acknowledges it, just like how, you know, okay, Audrey, you know, she's at a point of, there's a purple background in the Roadhouse. She kind of experiences this, like, this is where I am, this is who I am. Like, you know, it's like a state of balance she achieves. And, like, it's even in the purple lighting. You see her actually jump to a physical location rather than this lodge-adjacent space. And then she's not in the story anymore, because the whole point of this show is acknowledge your trauma, and then the real work can begin.
Yeah. So one of the things that you, John, that you mentioned in the article is you feel that Cooper screwed up. And I thought he screwed up, and lately I've been wondering if maybe he didn't screw up by trying to take Laura away. And I don't know. I'm wondering, you're saying he screwed up and the fireman is forgiving and keeps on helping Cooper to do the right thing or go do the right things. But I keep wondering, is like somebody had to make Laura disappear. And is that the fireman, or is that just, I don't know, is that just fate? Or I don't know.
Well, no, I think it's a lodge-adjacent space. Like, I don't think Laura actually disappeared. I just think that the veil that's over the town that everybody thinks is real, she disappeared there.
I see.
And, it's kind of, like, it took me a while to get to, like, figure it out where I could put it in a sentence.
Yeah.
But that's basically it, because like, you think about the end of Final Dossier, like, like when Tamara Preston is in town, she's hearing this wackadoo idea that like she's still alive, that she's a missing person. But then like as she's flying away, like her head feels like the cloud is lifting, and like, she feels a lot more steady. So like I think that that's a ruse that's just literally over the town of Twin Peaks area.
Wow.
That has, one White Lodge portal and one Black Lodge portal, and like, like there's like and the Palmer House and like the Roadhouse and like all these places that are like massively entwined with this other veil, like lodge adjacent reality. So like I don't think Laura Palmer actually did die. I just think that the town had to come to terms with the trauma that's even worse than that. Like basically the golden orb, I think, is from the fireman to reintroduce the memory back into the town. I think that, because the black orb that has Bob in it, it's like nothing but moving Frank Silva images. And, he even has dialogue, like that's Bob inside there. But what's in the golden orb? It's the homecoming picture.
Yeah.
It has nothing to do with anything life. It has to do with like, like this is the story that we were presented with at the end of season 2. The episodes like where it has absolutely nothing to do with Laura, and then we see the picture at the very end with the credits. It's like, remember this girl, remember the actual story.
Right.
It's like it's never going to get too far away from there. But in this reality where Cooper went in through an owl symbol back in time through lodge adjacent space, steals that version of Laura out of the continuity. I think probably, the black and white Andy vision that happens. The fireman brings Andy in.
Yeah.
There's two angels flanking that picture of Laura.
Right.
Yeah.
I think there's the Fire Walk with Me angel that takes Laura out of there, and then there's the angel. Probably, like that sound that, they'll listen to the sounds, is basically probably that angel coming to take away that Laura from Cooper before he can actually finish what he thought he was going to do.
Yeah. And for some reason, I keep thinking, when I watch the show, I think that like when Laura is being in the woods, she gets taken away, and then we have Laura in the lodge or Carrie in the lodge. I feel like it's happening simultaneously. Yes. It's happening at the same time.
The mirror effect.
Yeah.
Like the mirror effect. Yeah, totally agree.
Yeah.
And I definitely don't want to lose
it makes sense. I mean, if it's veiled realities, it totally makes sense that it could both technically be happening that way.
Yeah.
And it explains two angels.
That's
Yeah,
true.
yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
yeah, gosh, I never thought that, too.
Yeah.
And it's duality, and so duality was such an important thing in the original series. But I want to make sure that our audience really understands this. When you're talking about that golden orb of the fireman, and I maybe I could read your quote you from your article here, but the fireman sends the golden orb into the world as a living memory that can reassess physical reality truths over things. So this idea is like it's not a physical thing. It's just, or the orb is actually a memory that hopefully will wake people up, that will remember what the official version of things are. And I love that. I think that's the best. Yeah. That's the best answer I've heard about this orb. Because I don't feel like Laura Palmer is going into the world. And,
she's not Christ. Like she's not gonna.
The timelines don't make any sense.
No, it's a literal picture. I mean, it's not an entity in there. It's just a picture.
Yeah.
It's the picture that Bobby sees, and he says, "Man, that brings back some memories." I mean, that right there, I think, is a tipping of the hand. I think.
Yeah,
and
it's true.
Like it just makes a lot of sense because that picture shows up everywhere. It shows up for us at the beginning of every single episode, even though Laura's not in very much of it.
Right.
I mean, it's like we're always supposed to remember Laura Palmer. It's like, remember, here's Laura Palmer coming through the fog again.
She's
it's like that orb is there for us. It's for the people in Twin Peaks. It's even for the lodge because like. I think the little girl who lived down the lane, that whole thing that like Audrey recognizes and everything, it's like that's kind of like the little girl who lived down the lane is like the audio version of that golden orb. It's like you see the picture and you're supposed to remember, hey, wait a minute, she died. you hear that story, like, you know, it's like, wait a minute, she died. You know, even the evolution of the arm was starting to kind of come around to the idea that, like, yeah, okay, so yeah, maybe it really did happen like that. Yeah.
And it's like a fairy tale or something, like that little girl that lives down the lane.
Yeah.
And it also reminds me of Fire Walk with Me, where Leland says, you know, where were you, Laura? And I didn't see you. And Laura says, I was down the street. And so to me, it was almost like I'm down the lane. I'm like, you know, like it's that girl. It's the girl next door. That, you know, that young little girl down next door, where everybody wants to believe that she's perfect and nothing's going on and there's no dark things happening next door, and I feel like that's the fairy tale.
Yeah, and it's the trigger. Like you were saying before, it's the trigger. Her picture is the trigger, and it triggers Bobby to cry, sob uncontrollably, and for us all to remember. Yep.
Our last section is Carrie Page and Laura Palmer, and do we want to get into that last section?
So I sort of started to mention earlier in this meandering conversation that you know, Carrie is basically a tulpa of Laura's trauma. So like I'm not gonna go into mechanics of like how she got to Odessa or anything, but I mean, there's obviously got to be a portal down there. That's all I know.
Yeah.
But you know, like she's got all these false memories about her own life. You know, like she's obviously kind of gone through her own issues, and I basically kind of think that there's a whole idea that I have about the actual Laura being inside American Girl, just like Diane was inside NATO.
Huh.
And they were kind of being kept safe there in a purplish space, kind of, you know, like in a balanced space that basically says to me it's very much like in the White Lodge somewhere. They're being kept safe for when the tulpas acknowledge their issues, like how Diane did. And oh my God, I can't even think of the part number. But, you know, toward the end, you know, she's in there with the FBI, and she actually acknowledges he raped me, you know, like, you know, like he, you know, she acknowledged like the actual trauma of that night. And, you know, I suspect that the very next thing that she would have said would be, and then he killed me, and, you know, created a tulpa that way. So I think like the way that Diane like eventually ended up going back to the lodge and turning into an alchemicalized piece of probably Diane, you know, I think that's kind of a precursor of what's going to happen to Carrie. And once the Diane tulpa turned into the Rock, she basically was able to come out of NATO and come back. You know, it's like you cannot come out until they come back in. You know, it's like that sort of a principle. So I think what's probably happening is because Carrie has not quite acknowledged what happened to her, Laura isn't able to move on to her next stage. So yeah, Diane comes back out. She has that really odd sex scene with Dale. Yeah. I think that's basically like the equivalent of in episode 29, Dale has to relive the night when he gets stabbed, and with you know, like when he and Caroline are on the floor, and you know, like he witnesses like that near-death moment where Caroline does die. Like that was his particular moment of like worst trauma that he was confronting. So I think Diane sees herself leaving that hotel. Like that's her looking at that other Diane from the car. Remember how she yeah, so she's living through that same equivalent moment, except instead of seeing Annie and Caroline, she's seeing Dale and Doppelcooper.
Oh, wow.
You know, like flip-flopping back and forth. And, like, you know, she has to acknowledge what happened to her. And then her tulpa has to acknowledge what happened to her. Then she has to. And then once she realizes, I mean, once she lives through it, once she acknowledges where she was, she's able to move on right out of the story because the real work of healing has begun.
Wow.
I like that.
That's really cool.
And I basically think that like the very last scene of the show where Cooper brings Carrie to the house, it's basically, it's a lodge adjacent space as far as I'm concerned. I don't want to have to explain that right now. Just because, I mean, I kind of already have.
You
but,
did,
like,
yeah.
I'm just counting it like it's not the real world. It's not just physical space. It's got that whole It's sort of lodge, it's sort of not mechanics.
You did a good job in the article mentioning about the fan, and you mentioned about the frame, the picture that Laura hangs up on her wall. So there's all these elements that are kind of lodge elements.
Yeah, like all the portals just within the house itself, and not to mention Sarah, because if Audrey's a lodge portal for giving birth to basically Bob's offspring, then so is Sarah.
Good point.
So yeah, like there's like all these portal-ish things to do with that house, and I don't care if it's the past or the future or the present. You know, it doesn't really matter which time they went into for this, because the whole point of bringing Carrie there is she is a tulpa. She needs to acknowledge she has to acknowledge what happened to her. And when the house could remember that Sarah's call of Laura, that was enough to be the : close parentheses, capital A, capital L, capital L. You know, it's like that. It could be her listen to the sounds. It could be
her trigger.
It's like that Laura in that particular tone that always triggers us to the same conclusion. That was exactly what Carrie needed to be able to understand what actually happened to her, rather than what Cooper and the lodge kind of tried to make people believe happened. And then when she screamed, I bet any money that particular Carrie got sucked into the lodge, finally turned into a little nugget of gold, and that one day Laura's going to have to come out of American Girl and then have to like confront her own trauma head on before she can evolve out of the story for good.
Season 4.
Or a movie. I'll take a movie.
Yeah.
Right. I do like the whole
Except we'll never see it because the real work is happening.
I do like the whole idea of the American Girl being Laura, because you think of like your typical American Girl is Laura
She's
Palmer.
all American Girl.
I like that. It's very nice. Well, this was such a great article you did, John. I mean, it's so dense. It definitely shows that you put long hours into this and stuff. A lot of time. It's impressive.
Well, thank you.
Very.
And you can go to
I appreciate it.
25 Years Later site. You can check it out. What else are you working on, John? Are you taking a break from this?
I know. I'm exhausted right now. I mean, you must be exhausted.
Well, I needed to take a break. This thing that we've just been talking about completely derailed our final dossier deep dive that's happening. So like that's what I'm actually working on right now. And then after that, I'm probably going to do a series on the Access Guide, and like my brain never stops, and sometimes I wish it would, but hopefully it's entertaining for all of you folks.
It is. You gave us a lot to think about.
Yeah.
I mean, I definitely am re-looking at things and things I had never thought and put together. So yeah, it's been awesome. Thank you so much, John, for your time.
Good deal. Hey, thank you for having me on. I really appreciate it.
Get me out of here! What?
Thanks, John Bernardy, for being on today's show. This one, I feel exhausted after. I am beat. I mean, my head hurts.
It's a huge download, huh? I mean, there's a lot to take in from this article, but it gets you thinking, right? It gets you really like re-looking at the show, and I think John makes a lot of great points.
A lot of fantastic points, and this is something I said off of mic after the interview, but my favorite part about doing the show is listening to other theories and other sides of it, and it's cool because it sparks your imagination, and it could take your idea, and if you're still trying to figure it out, listening to him or Joel, it makes you, almost helps you along the way figuring it out for yourself, and that's why I love it so much, and I love what we get to do is listen to these people. I wish I had the talent to put what I thought into words like that.
Yeah, that's such a gift.
Couldn't. It is a gift, and I couldn't do it.
Both Joel and John are both excellent at doing that. And with John, you'll be reading his stuff, and he'll do things where he'll say something, but it also is like almost a dual meaning. Like he talks about the arm wrestling of.
Let's go back to starting position. It's really much more comfortable.
This article, the reset idea is also about balance. It's all about the balance of of your life and about these people and stuff, but he's using this arm wrestling thing as let's reset. And I love that. I love the way he plays. He's playing with it as in, of course, we know it as the arm wrestling of Mr. C.
Yeah.
But he does that all the time. He's got a gift with the way he with words. And,
he does.
And Joel is the same way. And it's exciting that Joel is now gone to podcast. Like he's doing his
Patreon.
And I just can't, for $1. I mean, I think everybody should just go out.
You've been raving about it.
Yeah. I mean, to get four podcasts a month. And like they're usually at least an hour long and stuff, and he's got so much great information. And if you want, you could just skip to his Twin Peaks section. But for $1 a month, I think that's just
good deal.
Really support Joel. It's
definitely,
yeah. So I just want to say too is just to read John's article, go to 25yearslatersite.com. And I always do the way I do it is I go to About Us and go to Meet the Team, and then you see the team and you can click on John Bernardy and you'll see all his articles he's written. And read his article, and then I recommend checking out the rest of the site. Lindsay does some great stuff. We've had Laura, we've had JC. I mean, there's a whole list of Rob. I mean, there's so many good, talented writers on that site, and every day they're putting out great work.
Yeah, it's like Twin Peaks is never over. It's on every day at that webpage.
Yeah, so check it out.
Check it out. Listening to John, I mean, I didn't bring it up because I just want to listen to him talk. But I'll bring it up real quick before we get going. I remember a long time ago, God, I'd have to re-listen to our old stuff. But I remember saying how the lodge was like all these elements of the cabin. You had the bird, you had the drapes, you had the music's always in the air.
Yes.
And, John talks about the mirroring and stuff. So if Laura created this world in her mind.
Right.
To escape this horrific things that were happening to her, this escapism, and I almost feel like this is Laura's world, and some people got in, like Cooper. She let people in, but then some forces are trying to get in that she doesn't want to be in there.
She's trying to forget some things.
Yes, and you can't forget it if these things are breaking down the walls and coming in. And it's almost like layer upon layer, like the veil, like you were saying. It's the Carrie Page. It's like she's like, I got to escape further down this rabbit hole of my mind. And then Sarah Palmer saying Laura triggers her to come back.
Yeah, it's like she wakes up and she remembers again. It's like the memories flood in. John did a great job really explaining this in his article about these memories. I mean, so many of these characters in Twin Peaks have forgotten things,
very bizarre. Yeah.
Or it's just the right trigger, whether it be Laura's photo or somebody yelling, calling for Laura. It's these triggers that are waking people up and helping them remember.
Yeah, and what if the layers upon layers, that scream at the very end was almost identical? What if her screaming happened same time she screams in the lodge being sucked up, and then you have her screaming when Cooper's walking with her? Like all those three.
Right. Yeah.
What if those three are connected somehow? Maybe in all three, this layered world, they're all happening at once.
I like it.
I don't,
I like it. It's quite possible.
It's quite possible. Anything's possible.
Right.
But it's so cool. So.
Oh yeah, good times.
My brain hurts again.
I think we should take a rest. We should call it a day.
You can email us at twinpeaksunwrapped@gmail.com if you have a comment, question, or your own theory you'd like to share. We appreciate the emails. Facebook is blowing up. We celebrated Twin Peaks Day not that long ago. People got real excited. Ben, you made a little cool thing, which was pretty cool. Like, I didn't think about that because you had Dale Cooper driving in to Twin Peaks, and then Laura Palmer saying "Tonight's the night I'm gonna die," but that was the night before.
So no, what I did is I thought it would be fun was we have season 3 where Cooper is putting out his hand saying, "Let's go home," and that is happening on the day that Laura Palmer dies. So Laura, I mean, there's a quote about like, "Today is the day I die," from Laura Palmer, and I think what I put up there was an image of Cooper putting his hand out, and you see Laura in the woods taking the hand, and it's "Today is the day I take you home." So to me, I just thought it was a fun play instead of like maybe she doesn't die.
Yeah,
maybe today, maybe today's the day you get saved and stuff.
Yeah, but it was cool.
I'm glad to see there wasn't as much controversy because there is controversial in some ways because we want to believe that Laura Palmer can save herself. she's a strong woman, and she pretty much has saved herself in the past, and to have a man come and try to take her home, I mean...
Yeah, I mean, I don't even see it that way. Like, Fire Walk with Me, we saw her... She is saved, and...
Right.
I think this... I feel like season 3, to me, was about Cooper more than Laura Palmer, but yeah, I don't think you can change the past. That's how I still look at it. I can't come to terms that he could change the past.
Yeah. I think that's for another week to figure out.
But going to what John talked about, these fake, fake memories that were changed. So really, this is what maybe something was trying to change that.
Yeah, there's like the official and the unofficial versions of the story.
Yes.
And
and maybe the unofficial version would be she is saved by Cooper and she disappears later on.
Yeah.
But that didn't really happen.
I think it's for another week.
It's another week, another time.
Yeah.
How's Twitter going?
We have a great community. I mean, I'm always enjoying what people are posting and sharing, and our friends at 25 Years Later site, they're always getting great articles they post every day, and yeah, it's just I love the artwork. There's so much great talent in this community, and I just love them. Yeah, and I always want to mention too, the YouTube support. We have great people who are always commenting, and thank you to everybody who's been posting. I know there was something I don't know if it exactly was this, but there was one I think when we had Amy Shields on, there was somebody who posted about like, oh, you guys should have like 1 million subscribers, and it was nice to hear that people are enjoying it and they think that we put out a great show. So thank you, people on YouTube.
Yeah, thank you, and share with others because YouTube is Google's a tough one. If we're not trending, it's really hard to find us. So share if you like it. Just share with your friends that like Twin Peaks, and maybe that will get us that.
And how's Facebook?
Facebook is doing great. We're kicking butt and taking names.
Right, and we always love that if you can give us ratings on iTunes, and if you can give us a review, that really helps our show out a lot. It gets other people to find our show.
Yep, and you can support us by going to our TeePublic page. Our shirts are up there. The link's in the notes. Check that out. Anything you buy off the store will support this show. And with that, I guess we're out of here.
See you next week.
I gather that one of the films you're planning, Ronnie Rocket, is really a story of American teenage, or is that perhaps the wrong way to look at it?
Well, if I ever make Ronnie Rocket and you could play back what you said, it'll be a strange teenager. But Ronnie Rocket is, it's an absurd comedy, a frightening comedy, but it's set in a 50s industrial world. Or a couple of different worlds, and it's a film about electricity, and Ronnie himself is about 3 feet tall, or maybe 3.5, with physical problems and this fantastic pompadour red hair.
Physical problems?
Yes.
Does that mean going back to a smaller scale of filmmaking?
This Ronnie Rocket involves some special effects, and it's a lot of rigs. So it's, I think, compared to Dune, much less. Yes.
And perhaps a film that's less aimed at the mass audience and more.
Well, it's got some fantastic elements that I think people would love to see, but I think Eraser has some fantastic elements, and they haven't all been, beating down the doors of the cinemas to try to see that picture.